right, so here we are at the Poor People's Campaign, and we're speaking with, do you mind saying your name, please?
Sure, my name is Faye Wilson Kennedy. I'm one of the co-chairs for the California Poor People's Campaign.
All right, so what are you doing out here today?
So today, the California Poor People's Campaign, in conjunction and in partnership with the California Homeless Union, is sponsoring a welcome dinner for those freedom riders who started out throughout California, and today they converged on Sacramento.
Okay. Thank you for your service. We really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. We're here because we think housing is important for everyone. Everyone should have a right to decent housing.
Okay, well, speaking of housing, it's been said that California has had a pretty rough time with, there's basically a housing shortage.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. Nationally, but particularly in California, we don't have enough affordable housing, whether you're trying to purchase a house or whether you're trying to rent. So the average cost to rent a one-bedroom apartment in California can run you as low as $1,100 a month and as much as $1,800 a month. But we all know people aren't making enough money to pay for that.
Okay, so I know some of our proposals that some of us have said in terms of reparations, we would like to kind of see that, in particular for black people who descend from reparations of slavery. Do you think that might be something that could be put into like a reparations proposal?
Sure. So like a housing trust fund where people can tap into it. So for right now, example, at the end of September, the renters moratorium is going to end. We're going to have thousands, if not millions of people nationally, particularly in California. There's going to be, if they don't get help paying their rent, they're going to be out on the street. So a fund should be set aside where they could be able to access to help them when they need it, whether it's one time, whether it's, so many times per year. There also money can be set aside to help people with down payments for homes, or even, can you imagine, because when people move into a new place, you pay the first and last month rent. So if your rent is $1,500 a month and you have to pay the first and last month, you're looking at over $3,000 just to move in. Most people don't have that kind of money because they're working minimum wage jobs. They just don't have it. And if they're a parent with 2 or more children, that means they're looking at trying to find a house or an apartment with at least 2 or 3 bedrooms. So you just add that up.
So in terms of the homeless population here in California, would you say it's disproportionately
So
Black
sure.
African Americans?
So in California, there's more than 160,000 people that the government will acknowledge, and about 40% of those are black folks. And it has to do with systemic racism, those policies. We're last to be hired and first to be let go. We're not making enough money to sustain ourselves.
Okay, I know you briefly mentioned about housing isn't affordable. I guess, first of all, how long have you been living in California?
I've been living in California since 1964.
64, okay. So since you've been living here, was there any point of time where you felt like housing was more affordable?
So for example, housing used to be affordable in Sacramento, where people could afford to rent for a while, save up money, and then go after the American dream to buy a house. It's become unaffordable for most people now. They just can't afford it because they can't afford the down payment, anywhere between low $10,000 up to $20,000, $30,000 they need. Who has that kind of money? Most people don't have that kind of money. So Sacramento is becoming like LA, is becoming like the Bay Area in terms of housing, even though housing in Sacramento is much cheaper than it is in the Bay Area and in Southern California. But when you think about it, it's just very expensive.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not because I lived in Los Angeles, even though I'm from Sacramento. I lived in Los Angeles for quite some time, but I have heard that there's some people, or quite a few people, actually starting to live and commute up from the Bay Area to Sacramento.
Oh, yes.
Is that something that you can elaborate on?
Yes, we have lots of people because they pay more in the Bay Area, so they live here in Sacramento where the housing is a little bit more affordable, and they commute. They either commute by train, or they drive, or they ride a commuter bus. They just can't. We have I know some people that live and work at Stanford but own their home in Stockton and commute back and forth.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So just maybe one more.
Sure.
Two more questions for you. Appreciate your time. So, I briefly talked about reparations. First of all, one, do you think black people who descend from American slavery that were owed by the federal government and state government reparations, and what would reparations look like?
So reparation, yes to both. I think the federal government as well as the state should set up some type of reparation programs for those folks who are descendants of those brothers and sisters who were once enslaved. And then that can be in the form of scholarship, that can be in the form of rental assistance, that can be in the form of helping people with the down payment on their home. It can take many different forms.
Okay. And are you vaguely or are you familiar with at all AB 3121? Task Force to Study Reparations?
Sure. I think that was under the leadership of then Assemblywoman Shirley Weber. Yes. And I think it's something we need to study, and then after we need to move past studying and start enacting.
I agree.
We need to move expeditiously.
Well, thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming out.
As a group, as poor, unhoused folks, and say enough is enough. Fight this policy. We're done taking the crumbs from the bread that these folks are taking off us. It is enough. So again, we appreciate all you guys, and tomorrow we will be at 195 Jaboom Street at Tiscornia Park for a huge free event. It's going to be food, free stuff, and entertainment. I'm going to pass.
Hello, my name is James Hall, and I've been homeless most of my life. This is actually the first time I've been homeless where it really wasn't my fault, but still here I am. I started in Santa Clara, San Jose, California. And I'm a member of the Student Homeless Alliance in San Jose, Santa Clara, California. And it's just amazing having seen any of them out here. So I don't know how to get in touch with them. But we helped everybody on the Guadalupe River get apartments way back in the day. And I was so busy helping everybody else with their paperwork that I forgot to do mine. So I was the first person on the Guadalupe River, and I was the last person to leave. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you for everything that you do. We really appreciate it. And for everybody who doesn't say thank you, I say thank you.
Last year, a couple years ago in Vista, California, a lot of my homeless friends passed away. One got hit by a car, one got hit by a train, and just last year during COVID, two of my friends died in San Diego, and just 3 nights ago in San Diego, House's neighbor passed away, downtown San Diego.
My name is Charles R. Jackson.
Charles R. Jackson. All
Yes,
right,
sir.
So, you explained a little bit about your being a veteran. Can you explain what wars you fought in, and just give a little context for the people in terms of your service to the American?
Yes, sir. I was a member of the United States Army. I went in the military in 1966. And I have 2 campaigns in Vietnam where I was a combat infantry sergeant in the infantry, and I was a platoon sergeant. And our duties were hectic in Vietnam, where not only we defended our country, and it was a lot of intense fighting, a lot of injuries, but we also did humanitarian things in Vietnam too that people don't even know about. Like we went and rescued children. We went and helped missionaries out, and we went and made them safe. So we had all types of missions, but most of the time they talk about the other missions that I was on with the Man Choose. That was my unit, Man Choose. Very unique, very different. Only ones with a dragon. That's us.
Okay, I know my father, he actually, may rest in peace. My father had a friend who also fought in the Vietnam War. He's no longer with us. He's an ancestor. But he said that when he went over to Vietnam, some of the Vietnamese at the time were telling some black soldiers that, you know, they shouldn't be over there because, you know, they were getting discriminated over in America. Can you tell us anything about that? Can you validate that?
Well said, and your uncle was correct. I was in the 4th Battalion, 9th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division, Man Choose. We fought in the Hobo Woods. That's right at the Cambodian border, at southeast Vietnam. And he was right. All of the things you have said about what went on and what we did, because once we got into it, it was much different, and it wasn't nothing like what folks had said and what they talked about coming home. And the Vietnamese, I can tell you personally, in that Hobo Woods, thick jungle, and we were on a mission, and as we were coming through all of these, like, it's so thick you couldn't even, you got to sometimes hold the guy's shirt so you wouldn't get lost in the thickets or chop through with a machete. But one day, we come across this like pagoda, nothing but monasteries and stuff, and we dealt with the people there. So it wasn't all gloom and doom, not always, but for the things in the jungle, we found leaflets in the jungle that said, "Black man, we same as you." They're little papers similar, just about this size, and they said, "We same you, black man." And we found them for, I don't know, a couple days. And when we found those leaflets, we were told that we never could tell anyone, but I know now all that's been busted up. And we just burned them because no one wanted to know that they was. And something else I saw the DC do while I was there. The snipers only sniped white guys at one point when we found those things. In the jungle, they just knock off them white guys. I'm talking about the snipers, not when you engaging with everybody killed. The snipers, they just were shooting white boys in the head as we went down. When we found them leaflets. That's what I know. In the Hobo Woods, southeast Vietnam.
Thank you for that story.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, oh, it's some Vietnam for black men wasn't what people think.
We appreciate your service, and we appreciate you, being able to, tell that story.
Yeah.
Just have a couple more questions for
Okay,
you, if you
okay,
don't mind.
okay.
Now, here in California, we have the AB 3121, which is the Task Force to Study Reparations, which I think we previously told you about.
Task Force,
So
okay.
what is your take on reparations, and if black people who descend from slavery, what do you think reparations looks like?
Okay, that's a very poignant and good question. Now, my family, myself, I can go back to my family all the way to slavery. My great-grandmother and grandfather were slaves. I can go back to there. And I didn't know them, but my mother did. And our family history, we've been having a family union since 1972, every year. And the only reason it wasn't is because of COVID this last year or so. But we went back, and we sometimes have 600 in our family reunion because we go all the way back, and we would fight everybody. And yeah, I'm for. Now, reparation, I think it's too complicated, and I think we're involved in too much of gonna pull it out of the hat type of situation when it's too much strings involved and it's too long And with it due, if we do get reparated, we're only going to get $2 each. Do you understand? When all of the hundreds of thousands of dollars of money spent in legalities, spending time and energy with people working, all of the stuff, all of the money, we could have went towards something that's especially like community centers in communities where don't have them. You see, once I was a pastor of a church in Mississippi, and we didn't have none. My children were making F's, a whole bunch of F's, at least 60%. With my own money, I bought the building next door, renovated, made it into a learning center, and had the children come, turn them F's into C's and D's and A's and B's. See, we have to have ministers and preachers and community centers going to make bold moves like that and sacrifice for the young. You know, I think a lot of our people still thinking about they can twist and shout when they old. Twist and shout in time is over. The future is children.
So do you feel that it'd be difficult because you think just the government won't pay it, or do you think it's just a matter of well, first of all, do you think the government won't pay it? And number two, do you think reparations should come in at least at minimum some form of cash payments?
All right. I think that I know how legislation works, and it just depends on how they push the last part through and who they can persuade to vote yes to get that 61. You understand what I'm saying? To get the threshold. Now, to get a majority vote, they can get that. But to get the threshold is what the key is. The threshold is that 61. See, that's what they can't get to, brother. And that's the difficulty. You understand? And that's it's nothing impossible by God. Not one sole solitary thing. But the way they're making it difficult and everything like that, as far as reparation, it probably won't come in your and my lifetime. Probably won't. And if it do, it'll be so least money, people probably won't even go be able to buy McDonald's with it. You understand? If they had not have done it, and all of the hundreds of millions that's put into it went into, if it's 100 million, 2 million for community, I think we would have got better results.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you. And
appreciate you too.
So, what are you playing here, sir?
This is a little djembe. It's just a small drum. I haven't played in a while since this disease come about. I used to play every week, but now I haven't been able to play, and I just pulled it out just sit under the tree, folks out here, and it's just. Yeah, it's a djembe African drum.
There you go. Going back to
Djembe.
the ancestors.
Yes.
You like that?
Yes.
And one more thing before we get this done. Where are you originally from?
Mississippi, a town called Ridgeland, Mississippi. It's in central Mississippi.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you eventually came to California.
San Francisco. I went to school on Broderick Street, and then I went to Balboa High School in San Francisco, graduated there. And out of the Army, I went to Laney College in Oakland, and then I went to California State University in Hayward. And after that, I went to Bay City Bible Institute and got a double master's in religion.
All right, well, thank you for your time. That's funny. All right, Miss Whitlow, do you mind saying your name for the camera, please?
Okay, I am Tommy Whitlow. I'm retired, and I live in Sacramento, California. I'm retired from the City and County of San Francisco, the Office of Assessor Recorder Doris Ward, the late Doris Ward and Ward.
Okay, so where are you originally from?
Oh, I was born in Louisiana, in Bastrop to be exact, and my grandparents migrated to Oakland. And they migrated to Oakland to get a better job, to have a better life, because they thought they could have a better life in California. My great uncle Joe, my grandmother's brother, worked in the shipyard. And the shipyard was hiring My mother came to California. She worked in a shipyard. And when they finished the ship, my mother showed us the ship that she had worked on. They were so proud of that ship. And as I was telling Kim, when we grew up in Oakland, we lived in the basement. I can tell you where we lived, 904 Filbert. That is where the Acorn Project is now in Oakland. We lived in the basement. My grandmother's brother, Uncle Howard, lived right in the front, and we lived in the back. And upstairs, my grandmother's sister and her husband, Aunt Jet, lived there. And diagonal from them, my great uncle Joe Lowe lived. He was not married, so he lived in a room. And this was a rooming house. Well, I know it wasn't a rooming house, it was an apartment house. But we shared a bathroom. We didn't have our own bathrooms. We had to share the bathroom. And I was telling Kim the things that I read in New York when the Jews first came. The apartments that we lived in, the basement would have been one family in a flat. The upstairs would have been one family with one bathroom and a flat. But somehow they didn't think we cared. And we didn't care when we first came here, because we came here with one thing in mind. This was a golden state, and we were going to make money, and we were going to live better. And my grandparents said that we should do better than she did. She didn't know what that, and when I say grandparents, I had a grandfather too, but my grandfather allowed my grandmother to run things in the house. He went to work. He said later when I graduated from college and went home to take him for Father's Day out, he said, "Oh no, we don't eat out." He said, "I work every day. I work." Jackson, their last name was Jackson, and he called my grandmother Jackson. Jackson cooks. We don't go out. I said, "No, we are going out." I insisted, and I took him out. He was most uncomfortable because Big Mama took care of the house kinds of things. Nevertheless, we grew up, and we had winos lived across the street, and they would come to the little store, and they'd buy their little wine, and they'd sit there, and they'd put the little wine bottle down, drink it, and then they would leave. They'd leave their bottle there. It was never broken. It was never laying down. It was always up straight. But anyway, I'm a graduate of Lowell Junior High School. Let me tell you, we never learned to swim because we didn't have a swimming pool in our school at McClymonds High School or Lowell. We would live near Defirmary Park, and my grandmother didn't let us go to learn to swim because she didn't know about those funny smelling cigarettes. Now, I did not learn about what those smelling cigarettes were until I was graduated from college. Now, isn't that a shame? But I lived in a vacuum. All of us, we lived in a vacuum. My grandmother said she was responsible for our souls. So my mother wasn't here, but we just lived like this, and she was responsible. So we didn't venture out. We didn't. I was thinking about it the other day. In high school, we didn't go to dances, we didn't go to football games, and the poor teacher, Mr. Devanovich, had to stay.
I've been homeless for 26 years.
Had to stay because I didn't go to the football game, and he had to stay there. But my grandmother, that was her protection. And when I was graduated from college, it's when I realized that my grandmother did the best that she could do. She did what she knew to do. And then I said, well, I didn't turn out that bad. But the bad part of the way I turned out is that I didn't have a worldly view. I only had we went to church Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Sunday. Sunday school and Sunday night. That was our life. But it's okay. It's okay. It didn't hurt that bad.
What kind of work did your family find when they moved to Oakland?
Like I said, my grandmother never worked. My grandmother took care of the house. We ironed my grandfather's shorts, boxer shorts. So he was well taken care of. His dinner was on the table when he came home, and he didn't even take his plate off the table. My grandmother, we took his plate off the table. I don't know, I told you that my mother and my great uncle worked in the shipyard when they first came. And I guess when the war was over and that work was done, they had to do other things. And my grandmother, my grandfather, and my great uncle, and all of their little friends worked at a foundry. They made springs for trains, and it was dangerous work in the sense that I don't know what they did, but somehow they had to drop those springs in some hot oil or some hot paint or something, and sometimes they got burnt. My grandfather got burnt, but they did that. And let me tell you something about that. My grandfather was just a number at work, but he was a superintendent of superintendent of Sunday school. And when he went to church, put his suit on, he was somebody. Deacon Jackson, he got up and he got to talk and people listened to him. And I'm not sure that happened at work, but he was somebody at church. I mean, I wish you could have seen him. It was just a totally different man at church on Sunday mornings than the man that was, come in and eat his dinner. My grandmother take his plate off the table, do whatever he's going to do. He was just an ordinary man, but he was somebody on Sunday mornings. So when you look at it that way, very small churches provided a place for people to be somebody. And not only were they somebody, but they were somebody important. And that's what I see about my grandfather. And that's the kind of work my grandmother's brother did. Now my grandmother and grandfather could read and write their names. My grandmother's brother didn't read and write his name. He wrote an X. But he liked to gamble. He liked to play the horses. Now, if he could go on Saturdays when the horses were in Oakland or Richmond or wherever they were, he could read those horses. I don't know how he did that. He could read the horses, but he couldn't write his name. He used an X. So it's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of what's important that show the ingenuity. Now, he couldn't make it in today's environment, but he made it a good living in the environment in which he grew up in. He just, and that's when we talk about why black people aren't working. I listened to McConnell say, well, we don't want to give them any more money for unemployment because they won't go to work. Well, it's not that they won't go to work. It's that they haven't been retooled to do the work that needs to be done. Now, we went to the candy machine up in Vacaville, those little jelly bellies. I had a group of kindergartners, and I told them, I said, what do you see? We saw a lot of little robots running, carrying stuff. I said, what do you see? They said robots, and I said, people used to do what you see those robots are doing. So I want you to make sure that you see what jobs are available and make sure that you are ready to you're trained to do those jobs. I want you to learn to repair the robots or whatever the new skill is at that time. So that's my thing. So that's why they want to say, well, you can't do this, you can't. You don't know what we've been through. If I don't keep up with what's going on, if the community doesn't come back and say, okay, they're no longer, I heard Trump talk about the manufacturing. That is gone. Robots are doing what, even you take Amazon, robots are pushing all the big stuff. They don't want people picking up heavy stuff and getting sick and not being able, and doing workers' comp and not coming to work. Robots don't get sick. They may need to be retooled real quick, but they get that done. So anyway.
Okay, so I just have one more question.
Okay.
So there's currently a task force to study reparations here in California right now. And do you have any ideas or proposals what reparations would look like if the government did give reparations to
Well,
people who descend from
I
slavery
think
in
that
the
as
United States?
African Americans, we need to take the lead on that. I don't think that everybody should be given a mule and whatever, because that money would be gone in less than a year. I mean, if you don't believe me, go and do the research on people who have had homes and left them to their children, and the children have sold the homes, not understanding that you have a gold mine here if you keep this. Your rent is not going to go up. You're going to pay the same amount, and you can afford this. They have sold those homes, and they have been broke in less than a year because they weren't trained how to manage the money. They weren't trained where you can make money for you. So if we talk about reparation, I really believe that African Americans need to talk about it honestly, not talk about it in terms of what I'm going to get. Talk about it in terms of what's best for the community, what's best for us in the long run. And as Kim was saying, we've got to talk about it in generationally. Because if you give us, all you have to do is look at the money that they gave us, the $1,500, the $1,000. If you were a crack user, what did you do? You went to the crack house. Maybe they aren't using crack, but whatever they're doing, they went to there and you spent up the money. And then they're in the same place. And then you get McConnell and say, well, look at them. You gave them this and then they didn't do anything. Well, it's not about that. It's about understanding how do you make this money work for you. And so whatever you do, it's us telling the government, and not from a selfish point of view, because I've seen African Americans do everything just from their perspective of what they're going to get out of it and how they're going to be perceived. It's not about that when we talk about this. It's a sincere, very sincere, that these people will not be in this situation. And that's got to start now. You don't wait until you get the money. You got to start the process now of making a difference, of people understanding. I'm going to get some money, and my family. And it's not about my nails. It's not about my weave. It's about what my children are going to do in the future. It's about generations. Can we see generationally? Can we look down the road? Can you really be compassionate and not sit up and pretend that you're compassionate? Because you know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. So if I don't know how to do it, it's your responsibility to make sure I know.
I think drop the mic on that one.